Welcome back to Africa Films. Today we'll be talking about a fantasy adventure film from Nigeria titled IGODO. Relax and be aware, there are spoilers. The movie starts with a mysterious man staring into the distance as lightning and thunder covers the sky. He decides to follow the lightning like it's calling him. At the same time, a woman in a nearby village is screaming in pain as she's in labor. After some time, she successfully gives birth, and before she can cuddle the baby, the mysterious man arrives and takes the baby from her. He takes the baby to the top of a hill and raises the baby to the sky, in form of a dedication as the villagers sing praises below. Years later, we cut to a modern-day Nigeria where a town is mourning as there is constant death in the land. The king of IGODO calls a meeting with the town elders, concerned about the current state of the village. He wonders why his people are forsaken and asks his dibia to consult his spirits to understand what the cause of the current situation is. The dibia informs the others that the solution would be to seek counsel from another man who currently lives in the jungles far away from them. Upon hearing this, the king demands to see the mysterious man, even though the dibia advise how difficult it would be to find him. A few days later, the man, IGODO, arrives before the king, telling him a story which happened about 50 years prior. His story begins in another village, under disarray as people keep dying. Parents are burying their children and no one else is safe. The king of the village eventually sought the counsel of a dibia, who is able to find a reason for all the deaths. He tells them a child, Ihikumere, was born on a sacred hill, a child that was dedicated to Amadioha, the Igbo god of thunder. Ihikumere was destined to be the eventual king of the village. However, this did not sit well with some people. This led to an attempted assassination on his life when he was a young boy. However, he barely escaped, not without losing his parents. On the run from his village, Ihiku was discovered by Ezoke, a hunter, while at the edge of the evil forest. Ezoke, feeling sorry for the child, took the boy under his custody and eventually raised Ihiku to be a man. As time passed, Ezoke died, leaving Ihikumere to inherit his wealth. Ihikumere was also a popular man in his village, getting the attention of women and leaders, an attention that would eventually attract envy from some villagers. As a result, 7 elders, all hating Ihikumere, conspired to get rid of him as they did not want Ihikumere to become a king of the village. They decided to frame Ihiku by hiding the king's staff in his house. The punishment for this offense is executed with the burial of an individual up to their necks, leaving them at the mercy of the elements. Beaten and subdued, Ihiku lamented that the village had killed an innocent man, and that when the father comes for the son, they should all be prepared to answer. He added that the blood spill shall cry with a vengeance, and no one would be spared. This threat falls on deaf ears as he was thrown into a pit, buried alive. Amadioha wept at the injustice towards his son, and in a reaction of rage killed all the conspirators except one man who tried to confess. But the rage of Amadioha caused this man to be paralyzed, unable to talk. Also, a giant tree grew from Ihiku's burial location as a symbol of the sins of the father. This is why the people of the village started succumbing to untimely deaths. As long as the tree stands, people would continue to die in the village. The men hearing the story suggest cutting the tree down, but they are told that only a special knife located in the hills of Amadioha could cut down the tree. The king decides to send some of his finest soldiers to retrieve the knife. However, he is told that only a deed done by 7 can be undone by 7. The 7 descendants of the 7 conspirators are the chosen ones to retrieve the knife from the evil forest. The 7 are Ebuna, the hunter, Agu, the warrior, Okonta, the climber, Umuoke, the drummer, IGODO, the flutist, Ikena, the wrestler, and Izu, the farmer. 6 of the 7 men agree to embark on the journey. However, Ebuna the hunter refuses when visited by the king's men, as he believes it is not his fight and still has animosity towards the king. Ebuna's father's land was seized and given to Umuoke, prompting injustice in Ebuna's eyes. He dismisses the king's men from his home. However, he is interrupted by terrible news. He is told that one of his sons was just killed by a tiger. Ebuna rushes to his dead son and carries his lifeless body back to his home. As Ebuna holds his dead son in his arms, his sobbing wife looks up and sees a white ram in the sky, something only she sees. He repeats her words, trying to understand before screaming the name of Amadioha in anger. 3 days later, Ebuna joins the appointed men as they prepare for their journey into the evil forest to retrieve the dagger. They are with the dibia, who adorns them with incantations for their voyage. As he talks to each individual, he freezes when he looks at IGODO. He also warns them of their perilous voyage. He tells them to never look back, no matter what they hear. He also tells them not to help anyone, or they will surely die. Yay for teamwork. He advises the men not to talk when they reach the water of silence and gives them leaves that will prevent them from talking. Lastly, he tells them he will monitor their movements with a bowl of fire that will burn as long as at least one of them is alive. After this, they dance into the night and meditate before the journey. The next morning, the men set off on their journey into the evil forest after saying goodbye to their crying wives. Some of the men struggle to leave their families behind, knowing that death is most likely imminent. Ebuna's wife gives him her bracelet, hoping to receive it when he returns. On the first stop of their journey, the men walk in a single file into the thick evil forest and run into the children of the night, powerful beings who are not to be attacked. The children proceed to take the men's weapons. Trying not to directly engage the children, Ebuna instructs Muoke and IGODO to play their instruments. This is successful as the children start dancing, giving the belongings back to the men. One of the children points to the location of the knife before they all dance back into the trees around them. Next, the men reach the Amabala River, a body of water guarded by a statue. As the men cross the water, the statue sucks Izu into the water, leaving Muoke to pull him to safety. They then reach the path of the Twins of Death, a place where they are not to look back. Okonta is struck with an invisible force, which is slowly killing him. This forces Ebuna to walk backwards in a hurry and frees Okonta from possible death by smacking him on the back with a concoction. Again, they are met by apparitions disguising themselves as relatives of the men, but they are able to evade the tricks and move on into the stream of temptation, which eventually takes Izu as he believes he saw his father, which was actually a monster. Eventually, night falls and the men set up a camp to rest for the night. But before they sleep, the men talk about their families and question why they are the ones to retrieve the knife and not their relatives who conspired to kill Ihiku. They eventually sleep, but later in the night, IGODO springs up, thinking he saw something approaching him. He fires his gun but realizes that he shot Okonta instead, killing him in the process. As the men panic, starting to realize that they may not make it as two of them are already dead, Ebuna inspires them, telling them that they must retrieve the blade for their village. IGODO has to be carried to walk up as he is filled with guilt from killing an innocent man. The next day, not long into the journey, the men are stalked by a group of tree dwellers, unnoticed. As the men are running out of water, Ikene starts to panic, as he is thirsty, asking the others to give him some of their rations of water, which causes an argument in the group. In the confusion, the stalkers attack the men. A battle ensues between the two groups, and even though the men are able to dispatch the monkey men, they are still outnumbered, and eventually Ikena is hit by an arrow in the calf. Muoke tries to help Ikena, but he is shot in the chest by another arrow. Remember what the Dibia warned about helping their friends? The team have to make a tough decision in leaving their members behind to die. However, Ikena is barely able to escape. Elsewhere, a concerned Dibia is watching all of this through his bowl of fire. Back at the village, the people grow impatient and convince the king to cut down the tree as more people keep dying. On the king's approval, the villagers take their blades and start cutting the tree, but the people are shocked to find the trees bleeding, with the strikes of the tree making strikes on the ankles of the king. This freaks out the villagers as they run away from the tree. Meanwhile, at the evil forest, the remaining men approach the River of Silence, realizing they are not far from the knife. All they have to do is cross the river. However, Ikena slips and falls into the water, only to be eaten by a crocodile. As the men are down to 3, they finally reach the hills of Amadioha. At the base of the hill, they enter a cave and are met by a guardian of the shrine who leads them to the water of sacrifice. The men see the knife at this location and attempt to grab it. However, they are told that to have the knife, a life would have to be taken in exchange. Enraged, Agu threatens the guardian, while IGODO and Ebuna argue over who should sacrifice themselves. IGODO mentions that he has killed an innocent man, so he should sacrifice himself. However, Ebuna argues that IGODO is a better man and people like him are needed at the village. He mentions that a leader lives and dies by examples, and the surviving men should tell the stories of their sacrifice. With IGODO conceding, Ebuna bids the men farewell and enters the cave, asking IGODO to play the flute for him one more time. Ebuna is sucked into the cave and screams in horror. Blood flows out the cave and the knife is released to IGODO and Agu. Suddenly, the guardian vanishes and the cave starts closing in on them, so the men have to run out and head back to the village. On their way back, the men slowly lose hope as they realize they are dangerously short on resources. Agu even sees an apparition of his wife, who says she escaped the village as it was destroyed. Delusional from the lack of water, Agu believes the apparition is real and hugs his supposed wife, and against the warnings from IGODO. His wife turns out to be a monster and crushes Agu, killing him in the process. Alone, tired, thirsty, and without hope, IGODO stumbles into the children of the night, who laugh and dance around him as he falls to the ground. But this time, instead of taking his belongings, they give him water to drink, recharging him with the energy to move on. IGODO eventually makes it back to the village with a smiling Dibia awaiting him. Though he is successful in retrieving the knife, IGODO is still riddled with guilt from killing Okonta and witnessing the death of his fallen comrades. Furthermore, he has to tell the wives about their husbands' deaths. He returns Ebuna's bracelet to his wife in the process. IGODO goes before the king, who congratulates him on his return, and in honor of the men who sacrifice themselves, promises to throw an annual feast. The king also changes the name of the village to IGODO. IGODO then brings out the knife, to the cheers of the people. We cut back to the future, back to the older IGODO, who tells the king and his council that someone did something wrong. They must find the culprit of the current situation in the village, or it may very well cease to exist. The movie ends with IGODO walking away in the distance, with the villagers looking on. Will they find the culprit and end the cycle of death? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe as it helps us out. Thanks and have a great day.